Welcome to the Anklers Art and Crafts Podcast, presenting peer-moderated conversations about the careers and contributions of the talented artisans who work behind the scenes on the TV series and movies we love. I'm Christopher Rosen, the Anklers' deputy editor, and I'm so happy to bring you a series of conversations with some of this season's most celebrated Emmy nominees in cinematography, editing, production design, visual effects, and sound that we recorded at the American Society of Cinematographers Clubhouse on August 7th. Hosting today's episode, sponsored by Apple TV+, MTV, and Netflix, is Molly Schock, ACE. Molly is a two-time Emmy Award nominee known for her work on Project Runway, Top Chef Masters, and Survivor. She sat down with three of this year's nominated editors: Eric Kissack, ACE, a nominee for Outstanding Picture Editing for a single-camera comedy series for Apple TV+'s The Studio; Jamie Martin, ACE, a nominee for Outstanding Picture Editing for a structured or reality competition program for RuPaul's Drag Race on MTV; and Peggy Tashjian, a nominee for Outstanding Picture Editing for a limited series or anthology series or movie for Netflix's Monsters, the Lyle and Eric Menendez story. Molly, take it away.
Matthew, out of respect, I'm going to get right down to business. Patty's time has come and gone, and I'm seriously considering you to replace her.
Oh my God, yes. I'm the guy for the job.
Tell me that. Why are you the guy?
Well, I've worked at Continental for 22 years. I bought the original spec script for MK Ultra, which, as I'm sure you know, spawned a franchise that's made us over $3 billion for
Renee, where the f***'s my green juice? You want a green juice?
Yeah, I'd love one.
2 green juices. Now.
Yes, sir.
Sorry. Continue.
Film is my life. Ever since I came to the studio as a kid and went on the tour, being the head of Continental is the only job I've ever wanted.
That is adorable. All right, well, listen, I honestly just have one strong reservation about you.
Oh.
I've heard you are really into artsy-fartsy filmmaking bullshit. That you're obsessed with actors and directors liking you, rather than being obsessed with making this studio as much money as possible.
Me?
Yeah.
That could not be further from the truth. I am as bottom line oriented as anyone in this town.
I believe you.
Great.
Good. Because at Continental, we don't make films, we make movies. Movies that people want to pay to see.
That was just great. Great shows. Please welcome to the stage our moderator, Molly Schock, ACE, and our panelists, Eric Kissack from The Studio, Jamie Martin from RuPaul's Drag Race, and Peggy Tashjian from Monsters, the Lyle and Eric Menendez story.
Thank you so much. And a big thank you to the Ankler for hosting this event. This is a fantastic event. And thank you to the ASC Clubhouse for opening up. I've been in Hollywood for over 30 years. It's my first time here, and it is everything I thought it would be. So thank you very much for hosting. Welcome. To my far left is Peggy Tashjian for Monsters, Jamie Martin for RuPaul's Drag Race, and Paul is Jamie's husband.
You can call me Paul. Totally fine.
Eric Kissack for The Studio. First of all, this was the easiest ask ever to moderate you three because I am fans of all your work. And as an editor, we know that story is ultimately what drives everything we do. But you all have three very different vehicles by which you are telling your stories. Peggy, you were telling a story through a historic event, through flashbacks and multiple points of view. Jamie, you are telling a story through it is a structured show that has to have a beginning, middle, end, but you still have to dig to make it a story. And Eric, as we all saw, The Studio is a show that is known for its oneers. And so the question is begged, how does an editor influence the story and is able to contribute in a way that is still seamless to the vision? So Peggy, let's start with you.
I think
one of the things about Monsters this last season is that I was brought in very early on, so I was in on all the tone meetings and concept meetings with Ryan, and I got to kind of have a sneak peek into his brain just very early on about what the tone of the show was going to be, and that, you know, the parts that were highlighting the murder were going to be as brutal as possible and as shocking as possible, because I think it was important for both of us that the audience always remembers that this is like a real thing that happened to real people, and it's horrible. It's not just this, you know, glossy television show that we're making. And then with that, all the lighter moments, I think it was important to give people a break from the super heavy moments, and so really lean into the inherent comedy in some of the lighter moments, like the funeral scene that you just watched.
Jamie?
I think the way that the editors on RuPaul's Drag Race really influence the story is that in reality TV, we have hours and hours and hours and hours and days and days and days of footage. And at the end of the day, the audience still needs to have the same takeaway that the judges did at the end of each episode. And so our job is to make sure that the audience is getting that in a very succinct little package with all those moments of humor, with all those moments of heart and personality added to them. And so we do what we can to add that through timing and pacing and comedy, and allow the audience to follow along with this competition that they weren't there for, that went far longer than you're going to see. And yeah, that's, I think, how we shape the story in that way.
The studio was different from any show I ever worked on. Probably the hardest thing I've ever done. So Seth called me sort of early on and said, this is how I want to make the show. I want every scene to be a oneer, essentially. Sometimes multiple scenes as a oneer. And I immediately started like spinning out, and I was like, well, how's that going to work? Like, I mean, obviously you can do oneers and they're interesting and sometimes beautiful, but are they funny? You know, because like comedy is so much about pacing and timing. And so like, how are we going to make sure that we get the timing and the pacing right if we can't edit? So we kind of like solved that by a couple different ways. One, I was on set every day for 60 days. And I was essentially live editing, we called it. So what does that mean? So it means that we would watch a take, usually 3 or 4 takes. And then I would walk up to Seth and Evan and huddle, and I would have my script, and I would say, okay, this joke, it's a funny joke, but it's not an A joke. I think we should cut it. And I would, like, my heart would be pounding, and I'd be like telling like 2 of the funniest people in Hollywood that like their jokes weren't funny enough, and they'd be like, yeah, you're right. You know, and so we would cut it, and then it would be like, okay, this line here, like, do we need it? Is it giving us anything? No, let's cut it. And, you know, what about this move here? I mean, we're getting a lot of shoe leather walking to the door. Can we add a line here as we're walking to the door? And we're like, yep, good idea. And so it was just like this incredible collaboration. And by usually like take 10 or 12, we had like the scene in its like structure. Like it was like down to the length that we wanted it. And it felt good. And then by take like 15 or 16, the actors had just like completely dialed it in, and you were just getting something that you'd want to watch on TV. All that said, we knew that we'd still want to be like picking and choosing from takes. So basically, we very carefully designed each scene so that there were these moments where we could cross performances, usually with pans, sometimes with more elaborate digital trickery. So in that little clip you saw, there were 7 cuts, including a patch, which we shot 2 months later, because it was a big piece of dialogue that we were like, this is just boring. This is the episode 1, you know, we don't need it. It was like a 2-minute, the scene was 2 minutes longer. And we were like, we got to get around that somehow. And we were like, the only way we can do it is to go in and do a patch. Bryan Cranston wasn't available. So that bit where the camera started moving around and Seth Rogen is saying, like, ever since I, was a kid and toured the studio, I wanted to come here. I was standing across from him reading the lines, and they sort of basically like stitched me out and stitched Bryan Cranston in on each pan. So we wound up having like a lot of tools in our arsenal to actually do some editing, even though they were all winners.
That's fascinating, and it also it underscores that editing can be more, because I think we all do this where we get, maybe you get a first script or whatever, but like you can just see like there's too much here, or this won't work, or I need a joke here to end it, and that how wonderful that you were able to be on set and basically be editing, in real time by like, oh, let's slide a line of dialogue under here, or let's extract this. That's really fascinating. You each had different challenges in that. Eric and Peggy, you edited basically the pilots, and Jamie, you are what's known as a lead editor. So all three of you have kind of these supervisorial roles of seeing the whole season. So while you want to nurture your own little episode that we're excited to highlight, how does being the lead editor or setting the tone help you inform your choices? Jamie, you start.
Sure. So, I mean, in terms of Drag Race, it's and competition reality in general, you're looking at the season through a wide lens, especially in the beginning. You want to make sure that you're setting up the trajectory for each one of the contestants to make sure that they're rootable, they're followable, people can latch onto their personalities, their unique traits, even if they don't go that far. And so that's kind of a big part of what I do in the first episodes in specifically is that I'm making sure that audiences can find something that they recognize and latch onto and connect with, not only these characters in drag, these queens in drag, but also the person behind the drag. And so that's really important to establish in the beginning of the season. And I, as the lead editor, and my entire team are really aware of how that affects their trajectory. And just keeping that in mind. Everyone has their own story, and it's really important to make sure that audiences can really follow and track each person's story.
I often say it's like a magic trick. Like it's fun to watch the season and be entertained by pulling rabbits out of a hat. But at the end of the season, when a winner is declared, you have to, or someone's eliminated, you have to agree with the judge's choice. And so you have to validate that. Even if the reality was maybe you didn't actually care for that performance all that well, but the judges sure liked it. So you have to make the honest, you had to make the judge's view true.
Well, yeah, and I think that's true too as well, that what I'm experiencing and what the audience is experiencing isn't what the judges were seeing on set. And so it's my job to be kind of that connective emotional tissue between what was shot on set and what the audience's experience, because you do want it to feel true to what was happening on set. So that's a huge part of what we do, is trying to make that emotional experience that was happening live on set true to the audience.
Do you ever get to go to set as an editor?
I have been on set a few times, but I personally am not a set person. So I like being in my little bay at home and being in front of the scenes usually. So, but but not often. I don't go to set very often. No.
And Peggy, so you had, you've got a whole series, and again, each episode is told through different points of view. So how are you supervising all that?
So, yeah, I mean, so when I started, I had access to, I think, maybe the first 6 or 7 scripts. So I knew that we were going to be jumping perspectives. I knew that we were going to revisit specifically the murder scene over and over again through different people's lenses. And so for the first episode, because it's really Eric telling the story to his therapist, it was really important to make that one, I think, the most real one that it could be, because everybody else's is conjecture, right? We don't know what happened in that room. We don't really know. We'll never know, right? But Eric's is coming from his therapy tapes. And so at least we know that description is the closest to the truth. So we wanted to make sure that that was the one that was the most planned out, the most brutal, the most vicious, the most horrific. And then it's similar to what you're doing. It's setting up those first characters in the first episode is the most important thing, because you want the audience to feel some sort of attachment to them, whether they hate them or whether they like them. You want them to feel something for your characters. So it's just really important to have a whole picture of who these people are. And so you see them commit this brutal murder, but you see these also very tender moments between the two brothers, like in the limo. You see like the quiet fury of Lyle in the therapy office at the end, like just tracking that these are people with different emotional beats. But I think overall for the whole season, one of the most important things for me is the music. In episode 1 is kind of setting the tone for the rest of the season. And so we had Thomas Newman and his daughter Julia Newman as a co-composing team for this season. And as soon as I had any scenes together, I was sending it to them, and we were talking about the vibe and, you know, what are we going to do? And a lot of the temps I was using were really 90s electronic, which is not really what Thomas Newman has done historically. And so I was like, I don't know if this is in your wheelhouse. This is what I'm feeling when I'm watching it. And then they came back to me with like, you know, just this amazingly beautiful score that was both haunting and electronic, and you know, there's definitely like musical artists recorded for it as well. But I think establishing those like really great musical themes in the first episode helps you track all the characters in later episodes, because you sort of attach themes to different characters.
Interesting, yeah. Are you cutting the pilot for the studio?
Yeah, I mean, we were just figuring everything out, you know, and so I mean, God, like everything from like being on set to how that was going to work, to how all these, you know, pieces were going to snap together, and how we were actually going to be able to edit a little bit. But like, you know, things didn't really actually start clicking until we figured out the music. And it's funny, like some people said to me like, oh, I don't even really clock the music in the studio, which is a shame because it's amazing. But also it's kind of great because like so basically, you know, I was putting the pilot together and trying to like, you know, some of the scenes were good, but it was like, it was missing something, and I was trying a bunch of different temp music on there. And I would thought to myself, like, well, you know, this other shows and movies have done wonders, and so Birdman was like the obvious like connection, and so grabbed the Birdman temp soundtrack and just like started like layering it in, and oh my God, all the scenes just started to come alive, and I was like, oh, okay, wait, this is what the show is. And I showed it to Seth and Evan, and they were like, absolutely, let's hire him. And I was like, hire him? And they're like, yeah, the Birdman guy. And I was like, oh, we're just gonna hire the Birdman guy? And we hired the Birdman guy. And he was amazing. His name is Antonio Sanchez, and he's like a jazz drummer. And I was like working with his temp. But then, like, you know, we brought him on pretty early, and I would send him scenes, and he would send back his music, and it was glorious. It was just, like, the drums were just dancing around the dialogue in this beautiful way, and like it was revving up the energy when it needed to, and revving down when it needed to, and highlighting jokes, and I mean, it was just insane. And so that was a real like breakthrough moment when we figured that out. And then like, you know, every scene after that, like, you know, I would cut a scene and like show it to Seth, and he'd be like, whoa, does it have Antonio's drums on it? And I'd be like, well, no, not yet. I just put it. He was like, I'll look at it later. So yeah, that was a real key breakthrough.
Fascinating. I think I'm getting a signal. Do we have time for one more question, or do we need to wrap it up? One more question. So it was really fun seeing the clips play here, because editors are kind of isolated, solitary creatures. It was really delightful to see these played for an audience, because I know that when you'll be in a tiny dark room and you'll be just doing this little eyebrow raise or a little moment or something, and it entertains you, and it's really nice to see it validated by hearing an audience response. Is there anything that you remember working on in your particular shows that was just like, this is just for me, that you'd like to share with this?
Oh, for me? Oh God, I mean, so many things. But now I'm thinking, of course. I mean, like the music, I'll just go back to music. Music is such a big thing. We always sort of, you know, Seth and I would talk about like, oh, what's the tone of this one? Or, you know, what's the energy of this one? It's like the pilot is, Martin Scorsese plays a big role in it. And we were like, okay, anytime there's a needle drop, it has to be a needle drop from a Martin Scorsese movie. So like all the needle drops in that episode are from Martin Scorsese movie. There's another like noir one, and it's just like, well, Chinatown is the greatest noir movie. We're just take all Chinatown score and put it in there. I mean, along with Antonio's score. score. There's an episode that's like he goes on a date and it feels very Woody Allen-ish, and we're like, all right, every needle drop is a Woody Allen, something used in a Woody Allen movie. So that always, I can't imagine people maybe made that connection, but it was really
What a luxury.
yeah. No, I mean the music. Yeah, we like went way over our music budget. And, Apple was like, so you need to cut half of these songs, and Seth was like, no.
Well, at least you gave them a plug now, so.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it's great.
And Drag Race, I have lots of those moments where I'm just like, oh, okay, like, by myself in my bay. But this season specifically, and the episode that we're nominated for is the Squirrel Games, and it's all about these queens getting pied in the face in an homage to Squid Games. And I am really proud of the comedic timing of that whole sequence. There's a lot of what we do in our show is playing on the expectations of timings, building up in a serious, dramatic way into a complete dropout to a queen getting hit in the face and going, oh Lord, and falling down. You know, it's just finding the comedic timing and also the pacing and finding the moments of silence to let those comedic lines play well. Those are always my favorite moments, is finding the dropouts that allow it to breathe enough to just let the queen's personality shine. But yeah, that the whole Squid Game sequence and the comedy build and timing on that is definitely was one that I was like laughing to myself in my bay and going, oh my gosh, when this is playing at gay bars, they're gonna laugh so much. It's gonna be so fun. So, yeah.
I think for me, it's that whole funeral sequence that you guys watched, because my first cut of it was a lot more serious. And then I got into the edit bay with my director, Carl Franklin. And that's sort of when we were like, we should let it breathe more. We should play into the awkward pauses. I had little ones, and he was like, sit on that guy's reaction just a little longer. And then by the end, the version that we submitted as like Carl's director cut still had a music edit bringing the chorus up a little sooner, because we just were like, is anybody going to want to sit through this Milli Vanilli song for this long? And it went to our first producer, which was Alexis Martin Woodall, and she was like, no music edits, just keep that song going. And so we're like, okay. So me and Carl went back in and we just expanded it to what you see now. And then that kick of the 80s saxophone into the main title is like, that's for me. That's my favorite part.
It's wonderful. Well, congratulations to you all for your Emmy nominations and for your team's nominations. And thank you for being here today. And again, thank you to Ankler and ASC for hosting us. I'm Molly Schock. Thank you for night.
Thank you.